You're listening to the Catholic Men of America podcast. Catholic Men of America is a professional business fraternity for Catholic men, and membership is free. Join us at CatholicMenofAmerica.com, and you'll benefit from networking and mentorship opportunities, find better employment, learn how to grow your business more quickly, and grow in virtue. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is Jeff Cassman. Today I'm speaking with Jerod Frank. He's a financial advisor in Dallas, Texas, and the founder of Wealth Coordination Partners. Jerod works with Catholic men who want to grow their wealth while limiting taxation and risk. If you want to work with someone who shares your values and knows what he's doing, this is an interview you need to listen to. Hi, I'm Jeff Cassman. This is Catholic Men of America, and today I've got a great guest with me, Jerod Frank from the Dallas area. Jerod, say hi.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Nice to be on with you, and nice to be on with you, Jeff.
You know, I've been looking forward to our conversation. There are a lot of financial advisors in the marketplace. It's difficult for the average guy or gal to figure out who he wants to work with, who's got the competency and the expertise necessary to get you from where you are to where you want to be, perhaps at retirement. And you and I have talked a couple of times. You've got a really great practice, a focus on helping Catholics, especially business owners, successful Catholic families, not just manage their finances, but to do so in accordance with Catholic moral teaching. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that you do that are very rare in the advisor market. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. But before we get into all of that stuff, tell us and tell our members a little bit about yourself, your background, your family, your faith, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. So I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've been here for about 10 years, Texas born and bred. I have 5 brothers, grew up in a Baptist family. My wife, who I met at Baylor, also comes from a non-denominational background. So I've been doing financial planning for about 10 years. At least this is my 10th year in the business. And about end of 2019, so right as COVID was kicking off, I got into, I don't want to call it an argument. So as I mentioned, I have 5 brothers. And so I come from a very loud household. We like to argue and talk, and then it's all water under the bridge and we move on. So I really enjoy that. And my brother-in-law is an attorney, and he converted to Catholicism while he was at Baylor in grad school. And so my wife and I went and visited them. He pushed me on a few things that I just didn't have answers for. My wife and I came back on the flight home. We were just talking and said, we owe it to ourselves to have answers to this, to know what they believe. You know, I had heard some really strange things from the pulpit about Catholicism, some of which I knew weren't true. You know, I knew they didn't worship Mary, but I didn't know what they actually believed on it. I didn't know the arguments for the papacy, for the church. Like I had been very involved in my church the whole time, but just had not really contended with Catholicism in any serious sense. So we just started exploring it together, and then we came into the church just over 5 years ago at Pentecost. So we came in together. So I can't tell you how blessed I am that my wife and I were on the same page on that. It was just such a huge blessing for us and our family. And then we have 3 kids. We have a 4-year-old Sienna, 2-year-old Gemma, and a 4-month-old Henry. Not Henry VIII. It's John Henry Newman was who he was named after. So we got three little ones. And yeah, that's about it. And I play a lot of basketball here in the Dallas area as well when my knees are functioning.
Yeah, that's a young man's sport. Well, that's pretty exciting that you and your wife made that journey together. And obviously with 3 young children, you've got your hands full. What about the rest of your family? So you've got 5 brothers. Mm-hmm. How has the family reacted to your conversion?
I would say I feel very blessed with how they've reacted. Like I can't speak highly enough about my upbringing and about my parents. Like, I don't think there's anyone that's prayed for me more than my mom has. Like, for example, like she's just a wonderful person. And like, so I would say honestly, like there's been some confusion. I get some questions and concerns, but like they've been at my kids' baptisms. They've been supportive of us. They like respect it more than anything. So it's been like very positive outcomes. I've been able to have some great conversations with them. None have followed suit so far, but we got time as far as that goes. But it was not at all you hear some horror stories. Like, I have some friends who have been cut off, or where it's a big contentious family issue, and we fortunately, I feel very blessed for one, having a wife that was on board with me, and then having a family that's been very understanding and supportive of us, because they know we took it seriously. They know we didn't do it flippantly, and they see our lives. And so it's been largely positive as far as the family goes.
So professionally, you've been in business for 10 years, and you've been a Catholic for 5 years or so. How has your conversion affected the way that you view business, or how you operate your business, or your relationship with your clients?
I would say the thing that became most apparent right away is that I couldn't separate my faith from my work anymore. Like, I was Christian. I had some Christian clients, but I had, by all intents and purposes, a secular practice. I was not doing anything. Like, I think we have a great process. So from a planning standpoint, I think I was still doing good work. But there was nothing that was really different from that standpoint. So that's the short version, is I just had those completely separated. And I had to contend with converting my practice in a sense. So I went through a small kind of crisis of whether I can do this, because as you can probably imagine, a lot of this business is built around fear and greed. Right. So and a lot of times we're encouraging it. That's how we sell people on saving and putting away money. And you're acting like the man who stored up all his grain in the barn and was going to live and be merry for the rest of his days. And then the Lord took him the next day. So there's some of that to contend with, where I really wasn't sure if I could keep doing this. And there's a lot of differing opinions, as I'm sure a lot of this audience is probably familiar with. There's a lot of differing opinions on these issues. Like, you have some in the I would say, like, kind of like the people who are trying their hardest to do everything to as much of a degree as possible right, that I think sometimes are leaving things on the table. And then you have some that I think potentially err on the side of just wanting to check a box of, like, that's a problem with some that I've seen with some of the funds that are available, where it's not really screened seriously for Catholic values, but it has a name attached to it, which is another issue. So that was essentially the short version of where I arrived at, is we can just replace those with trying to seek after virtues. So prudence and generosity, like, we're called to be good stewards, and the Bible and Scripture and the church talk about money a lot. There is a lot to be learned. And so much of the blessings in the church and throughout history have been from successful families that have given out of their excess and done wonderful things that have lasted for centuries and had great impact. And a lot of it too is there's so much family separation now, where everybody's chasing everything, and we put our parents in nursing homes, and then we send our kids off as much as possible. So, like, that's a little bit outside of the financial product planning realm, but there's a lot of other things where we can just try to get people closer to heaven with their money, is really the goal first and foremost.
Yeah, that's great. You don't oftentimes hear a financial advisor talking about getting closer to heaven. So that's wonderful. I want to go back to something that you talked about. there's this niche investing where people want to invest according to their values, to their principles. But not everybody that's gotten into that business actually does a good job of providing options that are consistent with Catholic moral teaching. And not everybody that's interested in that has the same kind of scrupulosity about that. Some people will say, well, I'm happy to invest in Amazon or Facebook because, they don't have a mission that's directly contrary to my faith. Other people will say, well, they provide abortion services, or they pay for transgender surgeries or other things. People that take these things seriously sometimes get really down into the weeds, into the details for that, and that's fine. From my perspective, you can speak for yourself, but when somebody comes to you, they say, hey, I want to invest according to Catholic moral principles. I want to avoid certain problematic investments. How do you handle that? What's your philosophy?
So I think from a baseline level, I do think there are essentially levels, because there is a level of conscience there. Not to say there's a gray area, but it is a question that this is being constantly debated in Catholic advisor circles as well, is where do we draw the line? So my immediate admission is that I don't have perfect answers. Like I've read what the church has given us as guidelines for it multiple times. I've talked with most, if not all, of the Catholic ETFs, mutual funds, investment providers, and trying to do this. The short thing I'd say is I'm on this journey too. This is what I'm trying to figure out, and I think we're still early in what is available and the solutions that are available for Catholics, to where I've seen them even in the last couple of years get better and stronger and more competitive, to where it's one of those things where what may be the best answer today as far as the best way to screen for it. So how I've done it personally for my clients is essentially use a custom screening on top of a custom portfolio. That's been my way of doing it, of building an ideal portfolio, putting in screens that I've built to best fit Catholic teaching as I understand it, and then screen those out and then done replacements and change the weightings. I don't know if that's the perfect solution. Like I have 2 calls in the last couple of weeks talking with other trying to figure out the best option. So it's one of those things where I'm on a journey there as well, trying to figure out the best thing going forward and trying to stay at the cutting edge of it.
And so you're a young guy, you've been in the business 10 years, but there are going to be some people who say, I want somebody older who's managed portfolios through market ups and downs, and, who remembers whatever kinds of crazy events. Are you a part of any, mastermind or collection of other Catholic advisors or other people that you can kind of tap to leverage their experience, so it's not just you and the last 10 years of your experience?
Yeah, so we have a great team. So at Wealth Coordination Partners, my business partner and I started it about 3 years ago. We have a couple of senior partners on the planning side that have been in the business about 40 years, and then I'm also a member of the Catholic Financial Planners Network. So I feel like I have a great arsenal of experts for planning needs, for Catholic screening questions, for advanced estate tax issues, like whatever those come out. I have a lot of resources to do coordinated planning, and that's really what our business was built on, is trying to be that coordinating driving force to making sure people aren't just making 10 different separate financial decisions and that it's not all talking to each other. So kind of our goal is to bring them all into one place and help be that driving force that makes sure it all works under all known economic circumstances that we can prepare for.
Yeah, that's great. I want to go back to something else you said as well. You talked about fear and greed, and certainly these are, let's call it, primary motivators for financial decisions, small and large. And we have a lot of both in modern society and our civilization, just the existence, right? There's a lot of fear about rising prices, risk, regulation, taxes, foreign enemies, domestic enemies. You know, a good faithful Catholic certainly would be justified to have a certain element of fear. How do you alleviate that? How do you, as an advisor, bring to my life, my family's life, a solution to that fear component?
So I would say in short that you kind of get rid of the word need in a sense. A lot of planning in our business is based around needs. What do you need? How much do you need to save? If you get X rate of return and you save for 30 years, you're going to have $1 million, or you're going to have $5 million and you'll be able to retire. So it's trying to create kind of this fear and uncertainty of getting behind. So I know this sounds strange, but it really shifts a lot if you focus on what do you want and what does God want from you. So wants versus needs are really important. So if we're talking about, let's say on the insurance planning side, if a lot of times what people do is this fear-based of, if you pass away, your family's going to be poor and broke, and so buy this policy or anything like that. And you just talk about what would you want to happen if this did. We don't focus on fear. We just focus on what do you want to have happen? What does God want from you? Like what's the prudent thing to do to alleviate this? If we're focused on growing wealth, what does that vision look like for you? Like what are you able to give? Like how do we, so it's kind of this balance of we focus more on maximizing in the sense of we want to be as efficient as possible, but we talk about prudence and generosity in that to where we can give out of the overflow of it, be good stewards. We have a cash flow system that's kind of built to help prevent us from being consumeristic and help catch every dollar and be intentional with our money. So we've really kind of built it where I know it sounds a little counterintuitive to talk about wants because those sound a little bit more selfish than needs do. But if you separate it from need and you can kind of get rid of that fear, people tend to be a little bit more clear about, okay, well, I want to give more because you don't need to give, right? Again, in a true like survival sense, you don't need to give, but most Catholics want to. So we build it around wants and what's the ideal thing that we're moving towards, and kind of this ongoing process. Kind of, this is not to call our process similar to sanctification, but as in like sanctification, it's this ongoing process if we're trying to move in the right direction constantly.
Speaking of moving in the right direction, the other component to the fear and greed temptation is greed. So there's nothing inherently wrong with being affluent or well-to-do. Accumulating wealth in this environment certainly is acceptable. But the stewardship of that wealth becomes more and more important as you are successful. It's kind of a strange thing to ask a financial advisor, but how does your faith guide you in the role of helping people be good stewards so that they've moved beyond fear, maybe, and yet avoiding greed? How much is enough? Or do I have enough that I can now start giving the money to my children, grandchildren, or to charity? Or how do you help allocate a portfolio so that a person feels free and can act responsibly with what they've been giving? And I guess what I'm thinking is there's a tendency among Americans to do something that's never happened before in history, and that is to save up for a certain point in time and then stop working and then live off of what they've accumulated. And before about 70 years ago, that was kind of an unheard of thing, right? Even royalty survived off of the ongoing income from estates or productive property. So do you see yourself as having a role there from a moral standpoint?
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of this is just in having good, deep fact finding as far as figuring out what this is actually going to look like. Because I think something it's probably going to be strange to say is that a lot of people struggle to just retire and just turn it off and be on a permanent vacation and do that. And one, I think, because it kind of goes against our nature in a sense of like we're meant to work and be productive and do that. And some people can do that, and then just immediately it's family, church, service. Like they can do that and fill up their time and be completely fulfilled and still be walking closer to heaven. Some people are just can do that. Some people can't, or at least have to work on it, or need to have a plan for just being more involved in something, or getting a part-time job in something that they're passionate about, that they feel like is improving the world. Even if that, and for example, that would be if somebody's perfectly set up to retire, but they just can't handle it. They may be able to work and then can give more through that. So one of the things that's kind of unique in our process is we kind of use the scientific method in a sense of we build a strategy and then we change one variable at a time and then run it out in the big picture to see, right, what's the change of this one decision? Let's test it and verify it. It doesn't tell the future because we know the second we walk out the door, nothing's going to work exactly like we did. It's kind of why the 40-year simulations are really kind of silly in a sense, because it's just we're going into a new world all constantly. And so acting like the last 40 years is going to look anything like the next 40 years is really, it's trying to bring some false security into something that's just inherently uncertain in a real sense. So that's it's just something that's an ongoing process, and it's a lot of good qualitative conversations kind of up front in an ongoing capacity about what does this actually look like for you, and figuring out what's their dream and vision as far as what that actually looks like. And then just on a personal level, some people know what they want, and some people they retire and then go, I don't know if I can handle this. I need to find something else or something to get involved with. So it's an ongoing process for sure.
Risk is a big issue, not just in the portfolio with individual companies or the economy, but there are other risk factors, and we've seen and experienced some of that in the last few years. Inflation is certainly a risk. Although it's a little lower at the moment, there have been some periods of relatively high inflation, and a lot of people think that that's going to be part of our permanent future because of the monetary policies of the United States and other factors. Do you have a strategy? And I'm not asking you to share, trade secrets, but do you have a strategy for somebody who says, "Hey, I'm really worried about inflation. I'm worried about the devaluation of the dollar. I'm worried about, the debt of the United States." Are you in a position to help that person plan for the future based on those concerns?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll use a somewhat I'll give a vague example because this is an important risk. So like right now, a lot of people over the last couple of years have had a lot of cash on the sidelines because you can get a really healthy interest rate. And then when inflation's high, and a couple of things that can happen, and that's really good for short periods of time. But as we know, that can change quickly as far as interest rates go. So that can work if somebody has enough and they live off the interest, that can work for a period of time, even potentially with inflation. But it is a massive risk for if interest rates do go down, and now all of a sudden the account that was giving you 4% interest is giving you 1%. If you're living off the interest, that's a 75% reduction in your income without touching the principal, which is kind of the security that's providing the income. So that's what it comes down to, that people get. That's the hard thing to do, is how do you actually spend down principal without risking really eating into it and making it impossible to recover. So we have strategies built around that. I would say we have what we call a rule book, which I would really describe as more of a philosophy of money, of how much liquidity to have, how to take advantage of, how to control your cash flow. So, for example, to prevent unnecessary increases in spending, or trying to minimize the cost of your insurances, or make sure your debt is moving from bad debt to good debt over time. So we have strategies all across the board for that, but it's really built on a philosophy of money, of how to make the most efficient decision possible in the correct order.
One of the risks that affluent, sophisticated investors are facing is the risk of higher taxes in the future. When we look at the fiscal state of the United States, when we look at the trend of our society, an increasing number of people and businesses that are addicted to relationships with the federal government, let's just put it in a very politically polite term. And so a lot of long-term thinkers are saying, there's a huge liability down the road. And when the government needs money, where are they going to get it? And the answer to that has consistently been, they're going to go to people who have money, and they're going to tax those people at higher levels. This has been talked about at the very highest levels in the federal government since Clinton first proposed a special tax on qualified retirement plans. And it continues to come up. So people who have put money away in an IRA or a 401k, thinking that they were doing a good job by, getting the tax deduction, growing money tax deferred, but now they've got an enormous amount of money in a 401k or an IRA, and it's sitting out there. It's like got a huge target on it for the feds to one day come and say, hey, you've done very well. We want our piece. And maybe even there's a special tax on it because now we've got to fund this war or this program, or maybe there's a president that's not as friendly towards Catholics or towards successful business people. If someone had that idea and they were worried about that future risk of higher taxes rather than retiring at a lower tax bracket, how would you respond to that concern?
So, as you can probably guess, when we get into retirement distribution planning or tax planning, there's not a one size fits all. I would say the easy term that I could say that applies to everyone is that a lot of times in tax planning, moderation is key. So a lot of times what the issue is if you have 100% of your assets in one tax bucket, that's a substantial amount of tax risk versus the person who's tax diversified. That person has options for where to pull the money. The person with the most options wins typically, because you can choose different buckets on different years depending on your situation, depending on the tax law, depending on what the market's doing. So being positioned and having kind of a rules-based approach for where to get money depending on what is going on, and having a strong position, like I talked about if you have good debt management, if you have strong insurance position, if you have a proper cash position, and you have multiple different tax buckets that move differently, you have options to take advantage to when opportunities arise, and you have options to go to if tax rates go up, then you have options. And especially that's important we have a progressive tax system in the sense of as you make more money, tax rates go up. So if you think about it, what we want to reduce is your lifetime effective tax rate. So we want to lower your total effective tax over your lifetime. So I'll give you a couple of examples with some easy math. So the person who is near retirement that is playing catch up. So they're in their highest earning years, but maybe they haven't saved a lot. That person it's a lot more likely that the 401k IRA is going to make sense. If you can get a match, get the deduction, and you're deducting it in the 30s and you're about to retire and you aren't even going to fill up the 12, 22% bracket in a short period of time, that's So it's not anything that's inherently wrong with the IRA or the 401k. What happens, and this is with any product, it's too much of anything is where it starts to become a problem. Same thing as you mentioned with, like we talked about earlier with cash. Having cash is great. Having your first $1,000 in the bank account lets you participate in society. Going from 100,000 to 101,000 may not be the best use of money anymore, depending on what else is going on. Maybe there could be a better use and inflation becomes more of a risk. So all of these things are in balance, or all of these things should be looked at in the whole and how you're positioned versus micro, kind of just looking at one box in your financial world at a time.
We've covered a lot of ground here. One thing I've not asked you about is the kind of people that are a good fit for you and your practice. Could we cover that? Maybe their backgrounds, their demographic, their risk tolerance, or whatever it might be. Tell us a little bit about who's a good fit, so the men that are watching would know whether or not they should consider, talking with someone like you.
Perfect. So for our practice as a whole, we have a pretty wide age range. Like I mentioned, we have John, our senior partner, has been in it for about 40 years, but even his book tends to skew younger compared to the average. Where our average client is probably about 45 is probably the average on the whole range, from more about like 30 on the younger side to a couple in their 80s. So pre-retirees are the majority. If I had to describe our most normal client, it is a high earner with a lot going on. So whether that's a small business and you're trying to figure out, hey, how do I, set up a 401k or a retirement plan in my business? And because that's an even harder one to deal with, whether, if you're managing investments by yourself, you can pick and choose. But if you're trying to do it for your employees, so we can help companies with their, retirement plans and offer Catholic investments, Catholic friendly investments. Or it's just a high earner where you have a lot going on. You have kids at home, you have a house, you have multiple streams of income, maybe a rental property, a lot going on. I tend to call it the high earners not retired yet is the most kind of clear demographic that we have. But most importantly, is somebody who cares about the faith, is who I want to work with.
Is it fair to say that the more complex their situation, the greater value that you're going to add to their circumstances? If they're married, if they have children, if they have grandchildren, if they've got business interests, if they've got charities they want to support, and they're higher income, real estate investments, it seems to me that a professional like yourself adds more value with the increasing complexity. Fair?
Yes. I would absolutely say that. My uncle's been in this business for about 40 years as well. And he said something, and I think this is held true, is like, if you have the time, ability, and desire to do your own planning and investments, then you shouldn't hire an advisor. If you don't have any of those, so if you don't have the time necessary to research, study, implement, stay on top of it, you don't have the ability, you don't have an affinity for it, you're not very good at it or knowledgeable, or you just don't desire to do that, those would be the reasons to do it. There's lots of people who can do their own planning. I am not free. So there is a fee associated. So if you can do the same thing on your own, those people are better off. Majority of people that I work with, especially as far as Catholic investors go, it's a lot of time and research to try to figure out what am I okay with investing in? Like, is this company actively going against my faith and my beliefs? Like, that's a lot of time that I've found that people can kind of outsource to us and use the kind of collective brain trust to feel good about it, as far as be able to sleep better at night, knowing that they're doing good with their money.
Jerod, where can people find you if they're interested in more information on what you're doing?
So wealthcoordinationpartners.com is our website. I have a calendar link in there, so you can book a time directly on my calendar there. That's the best place to find me.
Very good. And you're on LinkedIn as well. We'll include that link in the show notes. People can connect with you if they'd like to do that. Any final words?
No, I was just going to say the only thing I'd say, if you're looking me up, just make sure to spell my name right. So I was named after a Jerry. That was my granddad was Jerry, but they named me Jerod, but spelled it like him. So I'm the only Jerod Frank out there that you'll see. But you got to spell the name right to find me.
Yeah, we'll put all that in the notes to make it easy for people to track you down. Thank you, Jerod, for your time and for the education. And maybe I'll twist your arm and get you back for a webinar on one of these topics so we can do a deep dive at some point.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Jeff. We'll talk soon. God bless.
God bless you. And for those of you listening, please share this with your friends and family. Catholic men. We're kind of a big tent here at Catholic Men of America. If you're a practicing Catholic, you care about the faith, we'd love to have you involved. Remember that membership in Catholic Men of America is free. You can join with no cost or obligation. And then if you want to get more benefits out of the membership, we do have some paid options as well. Please like us and follow us here on YouTube as well as on all the social media channels. And as always, God bless you and thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with Jerod Frank. You know, most advisors are following a script and just selling you a product. Jerod specializes in working with Catholic men who want to navigate the complicated and difficult choices facing anyone who wants to get ahead. Visit Jerod at wealthcoordinationpartners.com or find him on LinkedIn. His first name is Jerod, Jerod, and his last name is Frank, Frank. We've included his contact information in the show notes. Peace be with you all.
You're listening to the Catholic Men of America podcast. Catholic Men of America is a professional business fraternity for Catholic men, and membership is free. Join us at CatholicMenofAmerica.com, and you'll benefit from networking and mentorship opportunities, find better employment, learn how to grow your business more quickly, and grow in virtue. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.